Cultural relativism and universal values are two opposing perspectives on the nature of ethics and morality. Cultural relativism argues that moral principles are not absolute and depend on the cultural context in which they are applied. On the other hand, universal values assert that certain ethical principles are inherent to all human beings, regardless of cultural differences. This debate has stirred passionate discussions among philosophers, anthropologists, and scholars from various disciplines for decades. Both sides present compelling arguments that demonstrate the complexity of this topic. Proponents of cultural relativism argue that moral values are not absolute and vary across cultures. They believe that each culture has its own set of customs, norms, and beliefs that shape its moral framework. According to this perspective, there is no objective standard by which all cultures can be judged. Cultural relativism emphasizes the importance of understanding and respecting cultural diversity, valuing the unique contributions each culture brings to the world. One of the key arguments put forth by proponents of cultural relativism is that judging other cultures by our own standards is ethnocentric and narrow-minded. They assert that passing moral judgment on practices from a different cultural context overlooks the historical, social, and cultural factors that shape those practices. Additionally, proponents argue that cultural relativism promotes tolerance, encourages dialogue between different cultures, and helps prevent ethnocentrism and cultural imperialism. Opponents of cultural relativism question its ability to provide a solid basis for ethical decision-making. They argue that relativism leads to moral subjectivity, where individuals can justify any action by claiming it aligns with their cultural values. This approach, critics argue, threatens universal human rights and can result in the acceptance of practices such as genocide, slavery, or discrimination. They contend that certain ethical principles such as equality, respect for human dignity, and freedom should be universally upheld regardless of cultural differences. The concept of universal values asserts that some ethical principles are inherent to all human beings. Proponents argue that there are fundamental principles that transcend cultural boundaries and serve as a foundation for human rights. They maintain that human dignity, consent, empathy, compassion, and justice are universal values that should guide our actions and decision-making. Universal values provide a common ground for cross-cultural understanding and cooperation, enabling societies to work towards a more just and harmonious world. However, critics argue that claiming the existence of universal values neglects the diversity of cultural perspectives and imposes a Western-centric worldview. They contend that what may be considered a universal value in one culture might not be perceived as such in another. They caution against a single, homogenized set of values preferred by some dominant cultures, asserting that such an approach disrespects cultural autonomy and stifles cultural creativity. Finding a middle ground between cultural relativism and universal values is a complex task. Balancing the appreciation of cultural diversity with the recognition of fundamental ethical principles requires nuanced thinking and open dialogue. Scholars and thinkers continue to explore alternative frameworks that can incorporate both cultural specificity and universal human rights. It is crucial to engage in critical conversations that acknowledge the complexities of diverse cultural perspectives while upholding principles that promote justice, equality, and human dignity.